Where did it all start? Once again, my name is Brad, and this is a video log of my heart transplant, heart failure history, and what's coming up. I've been dealing with this for 18 years. I was diagnosed originally in Oklahoma. I was 22 years old. I had decided to move away from my family, several states away, and kind of start a new life with someone new. It was a big deal. I was away from everything and everyone that I knew, pretty much. And 2 months after moving, I got really sick. There was a bad flu going around, and it hit me especially hard. And I ended up in the hospital, reluctantly. My girlfriend asked me to check into the hospital, to go to the emergency room. I didn't think it was necessary, but I did, and found out I had an enlarged heart. That was a big shock, and not all at once. There was a lot of changes coming up. Suddenly I had a debilitating condition that wasn't going to improve much, if at all. I needed to see a heart doctor. It was very serious. I needed to change my diet, change my activity, start taking medicines. It was a shock, and I didn't adjust all at once. I really don't think anybody could. I've known people who have recently been diagnosed and watched the struggles that they go through, because it's a lot to go from the lifestyle that you lived to being restricted. I went through a lot of difficulty with cutting out sodium, with cutting out caffeine, with eating healthier, and I see others. It's really tough to just suddenly go from one lifestyle to another, and it helps if you can ease into it, but there's only so much you can do depending on your situation. I was given a heart doctor. I was not fond of him. We did not get along. He was very arrogant, an older gentleman, saved a lot of lives, but wasn't much for listening. He accused me of having a drug addiction that caused this. I've never touched drugs, never smoked. So we didn't get along. He tried to scare me by telling me he's not trying to scare me. His wife was his nurse and assistant. Just didn't work well. But anyway, I ended up finding another doctor. Things got a lot better. They put me on different medication, and I managed. I spent 18 years managing. This problem comes up, I deal with it. That problem comes up, I deal with it. In the beginning, I think I was on digoxin, fluid pill, Lasix, and potassium. I think was the only three things I was on in the beginning. The second doctor started me on Coreg, and I want to say spironolactone. Eventually, I got put on lisinopril. I'm still on all of these, though the doses have changed. I eventually was given Sotalol, which did the opposite of what it was supposed to in my case, so they switched me to amiodarone, and it's just been a long process. A year and a half, 2 years after being diagnosed, I started having episodes of ventral fibrillation, VFib, where my heart would just take off and race. And VFib and AFib are very similar, but VFib is a lot more dangerous because your heart is beating out of sync. AFib is basically a fast heart rate. It starts at the top. VFib is the bottom and the top aren't matching. And you can get lightheaded, pass out, and die within minutes. There's a whole experience that I'll eventually share, being lifelined to another hospital and being given a ICD. And that was another shock. But initially, my girlfriend went to a lot of trouble to control and reduce my sodium and reduce my diet to not only bring my sodium down but bring my weight down. And she really did a good job, but I gave her hell. It wasn't her fault. I went from being able to eat whatever I wanted, from eating fast food, Chinese, microwave dinners, whatever, to not being able to do any of those, to sitting at home and having a sandwich and 13 chips, because everything was by portion. It was too much, too quick, too hard. And given time, I would have adjusted. But I've had an ICD device put in because of VFib. That was a scary experience. I've moved a few times. I went through a whole nother experience having the ICD device replaced. By the time they did, I was afraid of getting it replaced. I went through sometime later getting the ICD replaced with a BiV, which pumps both chambers of the bottom of the heart, and that helped a lot. But slowly I've gotten worse, and that's worn down. The past couple of years, the doctor's been occasionally sending me to have a stress test, and not the ones that you run, but this one's on a bike, so it's not that hard on me. And I was on the decline, and after the last one, he said, it's time to start this heart transplant process. I had no idea what I was in for, and I'm still learning by that process. And I've talked about doing these videos, and I've put it off, and I really shouldn't anymore, because we're getting to a point where I really need to start documenting what's going on, because a lot of things are changing now. I've had 4 or 5 appointments made in the past few days. Got a lot of tests coming up, traveling. It's a lot to do, and I went through several months of getting insurance straight. It really was a lot more complicated than I would have imagined, and continues to surprise me. Over the years, I've had a lot of on and off problems with being congested. The fluid builds up in my lungs. That is my main telltale sign when I'm having problems. Another common sign is swelling of the ankles, although I never have that problem myself. It's always in the lungs. I kind of wish it was in the ankles, because when it gets in the lungs and you start getting fluid in there and you have problems breathing, that's pretty scary. And I really don't like that, and I've dealt with that off and on for 18 years. And I've had to change my medicine. I bit my lip, and it's going to bleed for a while. Because blood thinners, yeah, that's what they do when they put you on AFib. And I'm going to leave some of this stuff in there, because you never know when I'm going to have an irregular heartbeat and feel lousy. I have a whole routine. I get up in the morning, I take meds. In the afternoon, early afternoon, alarm goes off. I take more meds. At night, I have to take more meds. After dinner, I have to take more meds. So there's a whole process. I make a lot of my own food, because going out to eat is just really not an option. It takes a lot of time and energy to do that. I'm a dad. I have a son living with me. I have to take care of him. Fortunately, he's 12 years old. He can make his own sandwiches now. He can bathe himself. But for several years there, it was really difficult to get by. I have a lot more support now than I used to. I live in a house with several friends. They're very helpful and very supportive. Very thankful that I was able to set that up so that I have that sort of assistance, and I'm learning that can be a factor. Are we done yet? I'm learning that can be a factor in actually getting into the program. They want you to have the kind of support, because if you don't have the right kind of support afterwards, what's the point? You won't be able to take care of yourself. And it makes sense. It's very frightening, but it makes sense. I continue to try and work. I put myself in the hospital a couple more times. I got Voc Rehab to send me back to school to get some education in web design and computer repair. I ended up doing call center work, desk job. I thought I should be able to handle this. No, the stress put me out almost as bad as the physical activity. And several times I was carted out of the call center on a stretcher because of problems, because of VFib, because of just feeling awful. And I eventually had to try again. I got some support. I had my girlfriend, when I got diagnosed, her and I had a child, married, split up. And I had somebody else who their parents offered to help, and did, and allowed me a chance to apply for disability again, which took 4.5 years, by the way. And I moved a couple more times after that. There's so many aspects of being disabled. It really is a full-time job. Just being disabled, between the doctor's appointments, between the medicine, between taking care of yourself. If you want to stay low on sodium, you've got to do a lot of your own cooking and preparing. That takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of energy. Again, I'm fortunate to live in a household where I have assistance with that. I have someone that does a lot of cooking and makes those adjustments for me, and I supplement with what I can do. Being a dad can take a lot of energy out of me, doing the things I need to do. My son is not as active as I'd like for him to be. That's a lot because I can't be that active. There's times he wants to go to the park, and I just don't feel up to it. I'm very much, or was very much, the kind of person to get out and go and do things spontaneously. Now I'm at home 2 or 3 days in sleep pants because I just don't feel good. I don't shower every day. I'd like to. I'd like to at least shower every other day. But I don't do much, so it's not as necessary. And I don't have the energy sometimes. I try not to let it go longer than 3 days, but sometimes I just can't help it and I don't feel like it. If there's anything you want to know more about, any topic you'd like to hear me discuss, say something. Leave a comment. If you have questions, leave a comment. The worst I can say is I don't know, but I can try to give you my experience and what little I know and what I've been through. Everybody's a little different. My heart failure, no one knows why, because it happened when there was a virus, so it could have been a viral infection. But I also have a little bit of history of bronchitis, but not much medical history before that period. It's possible I was misdiagnosed and had a weak heart to begin with. It's hard to say. Doctors really can't tell me. I believe idiopathic is the word they like to use. Nonetheless, I've made it this long. Looking back, it's kind of frustrating that I haven't had the opportunity to have a full adult life. At the same time, I've managed to be there for 12 years for my son and see him grow up, and I'm not done yet. Feel free to leave questions. Thank you for watching, and hang in there.